When sizing a junction box that will contain alternating current or metal-clad type cables, varying in sizes from number 14 to number 1 American wire gauge conductors, and will also contain splices, Article 314.28 of the National Electrical Code must be applied. This article specifically addresses the requirements for sizing pole and junction boxes or conduit bodies that contain conductors of number 4 American wire gauge or larger. To properly size the junction box in question, several factors need to be considered. Firstly, the number and size of the conductors entering the box. Secondly, the number of conduit or cable entries into the box. Thirdly, the presence of splices or terminations within the box. Fourthly, the requirements for adequate working space within the box. Article 314.28 dictates the minimum dimensions of the box based on the conduit or cable entries. For straight pulls, where the conductors enter one side of the box and exit the opposite side, the length of the box must not be less than 8 times the trade diameter of the largest raceway. This requirement ensures that there is sufficient space for the conductors to be pulled through the box without excessive bending or stress. For angle or U-pulls, or where splices are present, the minimum dimensions of the box are calculated differently. The distance between each raceway entry inside the box and the opposite wall of the box must not be less than 6 times the trade diameter of the largest raceway. This ensures that there is adequate space for the conductors to be bent around the corner or for splices to be made without crowding. Additionally, the sum of the diameters of all raceways entering one side of the box must be considered. The distance between that side of the box and the opposite wall must not be less than 6 times that sum. This prevents overcrowding of conductors and ensures that there is sufficient space for heat dissipation. In cases where the box contains conductors of different sizes, the largest conductor size is used to determine the minimum dimensions of the box. This ensures that the box is large enough to accommodate all of the conductors, regardless of their size. It is important to note that these are minimum requirements, and the actual size of the box may need to be larger depending on the specific application. Factors such as the number of splices, the type of connectors used, and the need for future expansion should all be considered when determining the appropriate size of the junction box. In addition to the requirements of Article 314.28, other articles of the National Electrical Code may also apply. For example, Article 314.16 specifies the maximum number of conductors permitted in a box based on its volume. This article ensures that the box is not overcrowded, which can lead to overheating and other problems. It is also important to consider the requirements of Article 300.14, which specifies the minimum length of free conductor at each outlet, junction, and switch point for splices or terminations. This article ensures that there is sufficient length of conductor to make connections without straining the conductors or the terminals. When working with alternating current or metal-clad cables, it is important to follow the manufacturer's instructions for installation and termination. These instructions will provide guidance on the proper methods for stripping the cable, installing connectors, and making splices. Failure to follow the manufacturer's instructions can result in improper connections, which can lead to electrical hazards. It is also important to ensure that all connections are properly tightened to the manufacturer's recommended torque. These connections can cause arcing, which can generate heat and potentially lead to a fire. When making splices, it is important to use connectors that are listed for the specific type of conductor and application. There are many different types of connectors available, each with its own advantages and disadvantages. Some common types of connectors include wire nuts, crimp connectors, and insulation displacement connectors. Wire nuts are a common type of connector used for making splices in residential and commercial wiring. They are easy to install and relatively inexpensive. However, they are not suitable for use with all types of conductors, and they can become loose over time if not properly installed. Crimp connectors are another common type of connector used for making splices. They provide a more secure connection than wire nuts, and they are suitable for use with a wider range of conductors. However, they require a special crimping tool to install, and they can be more expensive than wire nuts. Insulation displacement connectors are a type of connector that pierces the insulation of the conductors to make a connection. They are easy to install and do not require stripping the conductors. However, they are not suitable for use with all types of conductors, and they can be more expensive than wire nuts or crimp connectors. When selecting connectors, it is important to consider the ampacity of the conductors being spliced. The connectors must be rated for at least the ampacity of the conductors, or they may overheat and fail. It is also important to consider the environment in which the splices will be located. If the splices will be exposed to moisture or corrosive substances, it is important to use connectors that are rated for those conditions. In addition to the requirements of the National Electrical Code and the manufacturer's instructions, it is also important to follow good electrical practices when sizing a junction box and making splices. This includes ensuring that all conductors are properly insulated, that all connections are properly tightened, and that the box is properly grounded. Following these practices will help to ensure that the electrical system is safe and reliable. In summary, when sizing a junction box that will contain alternating current or metal clad type cables, varying in sizes from number 14 to number 1 American wire gauge conductors, and will also contain splices, it is essential to apply Article 314.28 of the National Electrical Code. This article provides the minimum requirements for the dimensions of the box based on the size and number of conductors, the number of conduit or cable entries, and the presence of splices or terminations. In addition to the requirements of Article 314.28, other articles of the National Electrical Code may also apply, such as Article 314.16, which specifies the maximum number of conductors permitted in a box based on its volume, and Article 300.14, which specifies the minimum length of free conductor at each outlet junction and switch point for splices or terminations. When working with alternating current or metal-clad cables, it is important to follow the manufacturer's instructions for installation and termination. These instructions will provide guidance on the proper methods for stripping the cable, installing connectors, and making splices. It is also important to ensure that all connections are properly tightened to the manufacturer's recommended torque and that all conductors are properly insulated. By following these guidelines, you can ensure that the junction box is properly sized and that the electrical system is safe and reliable.